This is J. Randall Wilkerson, author of the Heart Failure Recovery Plan, Successful Heart Regeneration Using Metabolic Enzymes. This is part 55 of a 58-part video series on every chapter in the book. Please review our introductory video for background information. Click on our publisher's name in YouTube to access the entire series of videos. Part 55 goes into the subject of clinical trials. When I first developed this heart failure recovery plan, I spent weeks researching clinical trials to develop a successful treatment plan for myself. I quickly learned I had a few months left to live at best. At class 4 heart failure, mortality is 78% in the first 12 months and often much sooner. I narrowed the study down to 33 clinical trials for congestive heart failure in which enzymes and supplements as well as amino acids showed positive benefits in double-blind trials. This is a trial where the participant and staff do not know which group receives the placebo or the fake sugar pill and which group received the enzyme. What struck me as a measure of reliability in the trials were the outcome ratios. Often the placebo group only had one survivor in every 4, and the trial did not last a year that often. The intervention group often flipped the ratios so that they had 3 survivors for every 4, just from a single enzyme or a single amino acid. As you've noted from this complete study, this book includes them all, so that the survival ratio is probably far greater than 75%. Chapter 5 reviews enzymes and supplements backed up by these clinical studies or trials in the footnotes. I try to evaluate all of the trials for accuracy and use several different trials for every recommendation where possible. There could be errors in the study plan, and many studies are compromised by unknown factors, like heavy metals in the bloodstream. This book covers the major factors you need to know to be successful, these wild cards that seem to sabotage trials. Today we are bombarded with positive and negative claims that appear to be scientific for every product on the market. Many consumers are dismayed by comments in the nightly news that seem to contradict everything we learned before. It took over 4 years of data collection and reading to write this book. Much of what we consider to be a foregone conclusion about diet or recommended medical care is often based on fraudulent reports claiming to be scientific studies. For example, one of the largest studies that's being practiced by the maximum number of doctors, cardiologists, and patients is one in which the report indicates a benefit from taking aspirin every day to prevent heart attacks. Doctors prescribe aspirin for millions and millions of Americans under that assumption. This famous study was called the aspirin component of the steering committee of the Physicians' Health Study Research Group. It was reported in 1989 in the New England Journal of Medicine. The study only conducted with male physicians as test subjects rather than the general public, so these healthy doctors skewed the sample group. The average duration of the study was 5 years, and those taking aspirin took 325 milligrams every other day, not every day as prescribed, and they did not receive pure aspirin. It was a product called Bufferin that contains magnesium oxide, a known mineral that prevents blood clotting, and calcium carbonate mixed with the aspirin. This is called a buffer. Another pill containing beta-carotene was taken on alternate days. The study reported at the end there were 139 heart attacks among the group that took Bufferin every other day, and those taking the placebo, the fake, had 239 heart attacks. So immediately on the surface, that suggests that 100 persons of the Bufferin group benefited from taking aspirin every other day. To show how clinical studies can be fraudulent, the report claimed there was a 44% reduction in heart attack risk by comparing the total attacks from each group. In reality, 100 persons were protected from a group of 11,037 men. The actual benefit was 0.9% or less than 1 per 100 in that group. That means the other 99% of the Bufferin group received no benefit at all. And this was reported by James B. Pierce, PhD professor of chemistry at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. Keep in mind, aspirin can increase rates of strokes, bleeding, and deaths from many other factors. All the subjects that suffered heart attacks in this study did not necessarily die. The actual death totals were 217 among the aspirin group and 227 among the placebo group out of 22,071 doctors. So you can see the actual improvement in mortality was 0.045%, not 44%, but less than 1/1000th of what was reported. Yes, that's 1/1000th of what was reported. So what was the outcome of this? Basically, many of those taking aspirin suffered other disease conditions and bleeding and strokes. Those who take aspirin daily can damage your heart. In fact, 20% of all heart failure cases have been traced to NSAIDs, or aspirin and other pain relievers. On May 2nd, 2014, the U.S. FDA issued a directive advising against using aspirin for prevention of heart attack or strokes, specifically aspirin daily. 7 clinical studies published in 2004, 2005, 2009, and 2010 found a higher risk of death among persons taking daily aspirin for prevention of heart attacks. So this previous information that we just covered shows that even the most famous clinical study that has involved 40 million Americans can be fraudulent. So when you deal with scientific clinical studies, they may not be scientific at all. No trace of science was in that study. So follow the money, check the source, read the actual clinical, Google all the studies for a single product, find out if it proves what it proves. One thing you must understand, that you may run into many professional efforts to steer you to their way of thinking. In November 2010, Atlantic Monthly published an article by David Friedman. It was entitled Lies, Damn to Lies, and Medical Science. This article quoted a landmark essay in 2005 published in the Public Library of Medicine, Why Most Published Research Findings Are False. John Ioannidis authored this article, and he goes on to review 49 of the most highly regarded research findings in medicine. He found that 41% have convincingly been shown to be wrong or exaggerated. Time magazine followed up with an article, A Researcher's Claim, 90% of medical research is wrong. John Ioannidis has received invitations to speak at over 1,000 medical conferences worldwide because so many doctors agree with him. They are not surprised by his article at all. As you randomly search Google about the enzymes and amino acids in this book, you will obviously run into many people trying to stop you from using them. Check to find out what is their vested interest. What is their financial benefit at trying to prevent you from seeking treatment? And whenever you run into a recommendation to avoid enzyme therapy or aloe vera juices, the authors of such texts will often make broad sweeping claims that there is no scientific evidence or clinical trials supporting such. That is why this book includes a long list of footnotes of such scientific clinical trials. Authors will make statements such as millions or thousands or nobody among the medical community could ever recommend such treatment. Broad sweeping statements are not specific. They are not scientific. They are emotional. Actually look for a clinical trial bibliography after each author's statements. Then look up the actual trials and see if they are truly proving what they claim. A clinical trial can be formulated to prove that drinking water is harmful to your health. And in fact, persons have drunk themselves to death by consuming too much water. So the key is balance in foods, diet, supplements, exercise. Never assume that more of anything is better. And do not panic if you read that some product contains chemicals. Check the data. The chemical concentration could be such a small trace that it's insignificant. Even selenium in this book helps prevent arrhythmias, yet in high concentrations is a poison. Copper is poisonous and causes anemia and death, but you need a small amount in your diet or the same thing happens. So follow the studies, investigate, and find out if they're true. Many reporters who report these on the nightly news only report a blurb. They've never actually truly read the study. Many network doctors are pharmaceutical doctors. They do not actually read the studies. They simply report what other reporters have said without investigating. With such obvious frauds in the clinical study business, be careful, pay attention, look through them cautiously. I found that many studies were conducted by honest scientists seeking to save lives and to see if certain enzymes and supplements actually would be beneficial. They saved my life. They could save yours too, if you act on them right away. In conclusion, this is J. Randall Wilkerson, author of the Heart Failure Recovery Plan. Successful heart regeneration using metabolic enzymes. This book is available at Amazon in print and Kindle editions. It's available from the Apple iTunes Store in an iBooks edition, and it's on eBay in a print edition. You can also order direct from the publisher. Wilkerson and Hughes, P.O. Box 777, Altoona, Florida 32702. Just include a check for $24 to cover the book and shipping cost.